No ancient gods were egotistical, were they? Well, actually, yeah, they were. So the Anunnaki, there's many stories where they would say things like, if you, in other words, to another Anunnaki, for example, Marduk, if you did X, Y, and Z, you will be written down on Nibiru as a hero for the rest of your life. Now, that's something that they actually wanted, but obviously that's just the Anunnaki. The Greek gods wouldn't have done the same thing, would they? Yes, they did. They wanted everything written down, and they wanted themselves to be heroes, which is kind of weird, because obviously what just so happens the same gods that the Anunnaki want to do the same things. Well, then you've got the Roman gods, which again are really, let's be honest, the Anunnaki gods. And again, they wanted their stories written down, they wanted their carvings, their statues. So, ego gods. The video you've all been waiting for. The Greek person Plato and his story of Atlantis. Well, if you've watched my other videos, you know that I've mentioned who was on Atlantis. In other words, there was a place, in my opinion. However, over the next few videos, I'm going to be showing you why you cannot believe what was written by Plato about Atlantis. So even though I sort of contradict myself by saying there was such a place, I'm actually explaining in the next few videos why people are crazy to actually read his writings and believe anything else other than that there was a place. In this video, I'm going to be explaining why I think Atlantis is real, and in the next video I'll be explaining why you can't believe 99% of what Plato said. Now, the reason why I believe it's real is because the description of Atlantis is given that it's in concentric circles. If you've watched my previous videos, you know that the Anunnaki built their cities in concentric circles. So is that a coincidence that Plato, some 9,000 years after the supposed Atlantis was around, actually guessed that concentric circles was how the Anunnaki built their cities? The actual date here of when Plato wrote about it was 360 BC, but he's referring in his writings to around 9,000 years before that. Now, if you go along with the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, which is an early rendition of what it looked like, the dates match. Why you can't believe exactly what Plato says, basically, I won't go and bore you with who said what and when, but over a very long period of time, 9,000 years, supposedly somewhere in Egypt, there was writings on a wall about Atlantis. Now, this was then told to someone by priests in Egypt, who then eventually, very long story, loads of different people involved, but basically Plato ended up with the information and then wrote about it. So we're talking a span of 9,000 years to remember everything that someone said. So have a look at this, and this is some of the information that's in there. Now, some of the information does ring true. This is why I said you can't believe 100%. So, for example, where it says that the gods split up the land. Now, if you go back to Sumerian texts, they did do that. They drew straws. And also in ancient Greece, Zeus, etc., also split up the lands. So let's have a listen to how much information was passed down that would have supposedly been written on Egyptian walls.
There was a plain which is said to have been the fairest of all plains and very fertile. Near the plain again, and also in the centre of the island at a distance of about 50 stadia, there was a mountain not very high.
Okay, you can believe that they wrote
dwelt
that.
all round, making alternate zones of sea and land, larger and smaller.
Okay, you could believe that that was
one
written.
of warm water and the other of cold, and making every variety of food to spring up abundantly from the soil.
Okay, starting to get a lot of information there on written walls.
Now, Atlas had a numerous and honourable family, and they retained the kingdom, the eldest son handing it on to his eldest son for many generations. And they,
as you see, I'm going
animals,
along here.
both those which live in lakes and marshes and rivers, and also for those who live in mountains and on plains.
This is all supposedly written on a tablet on a wall.
Every king surpassing the one who went before him to the utmost of his power, until they made the building a marvel to behold, which the palace was situated had a diameter of 5 stadia. All this, including the zones and the bridge, which...
So you really think they put the measurements on a hieroglyphics on a wall in a temple somewhere in Egypt that we've never found, that then someone had to remember all of this to give it to someone else that gave it, eventually got to Plato? Seriously? There's just too much information.
The palaces in the interior of the citadel were constructed on this wise. In the centre was a holy temple dedicated to Cleito and Poseidon, which remained inaccessible and was surrounded...
I mean, this just goes on, as you can see. We're only halfway through, so too much information to be true. Demons and dragons. I know I've already covered this before, but there's still people out there that say aliens are demons, etc., etc. Well, a demon is a meteorite that comes to Earth, and a dragon is one that has a tau. These are the actual ancient texts, and I'll try and prove that by going with this particular bit here. This was a video done by someone, suppressed cuneiform tablets that parallel the Bible, and that's because I'm doing a Bible discussion soon regarding the Anunnaki. And this person's great, but what he does is he starts reading this, and he's talking about Tiamat, which we know was the planet that Nibiru smashed into, which ended up creating Earth. Tiamat had one half was water, the other half was land, and thus we ended up with Earth, which had water and land, and the asteroid belt, etc., and obviously comets flying around that have an icy tail. So have a listen to this, because at the beginning of the he's going through a cuneiform tablet here that's very it's in public domain, but very few people know of it. So have a listen to this.
For his length is 50 baru. The baru is the distance that may be covered in 2 hours travel, about 6 or 7 miles, and this would make the dragon 300 or 350 miles in length.
So he's talking about a dragon, which we know is in space. Well, they say heaven, but of course we know heaven should have been space. Here's some more where he carries on talking.
6 cubits is his mouth, 12 cubits his. 12 cubits is the circuit of his ears. For the space of 60 cubits he, birds. In water 9 cubits deep he drags, he raises his tail...
Drags water along, did you hear that? So again, another reason why dragons are the ones with the towels. And another passage here.
Making the hair stand up all over my body, so it's just, wow, it's pretty incredible. It's like...
Sorry, this is where he's working stuff out, that it's actually celestial bodies, because the Anunnaki called the planets deities, really.
Syncing up with the music. So now let's talk about the 7 evil demons. The 7 evil demons. The remainder of the verse illegible, as well as the beginning of the verse, opened his mouth and spake to the god, let cloud arise and storm stir up, the sill of the life hold before thy face, set on, and thou shalt slay the Labu. He raised up cloud and stirred up storm. He held...
So basically what he said is there's demons, which are normal meteors that enter Earth's atmosphere. So next time you sort of say demons are aliens, etc., just go back and think about the original translation. Demons were just meteorites, dragons were asteroids with towers. While I'm doing my research for the upcoming debate on the 16th of July, 5 PM live chat TikTok, with someone regarding whether or not the Bible is actually talking about the Anunnaki, so don't forget to join on that date. I come across this gentleman's video, not him, he's Charlton Heston, but the person's called David Vose, and he's actually got some very good points. There's 1 or 2 things throughout the whole 53 minutes I would slightly disagree with, but he's very knowledgeable, and I thought I'd play some of the information that he's got to give on here.
There's very few words on those tablets. Doesn't look like enough words, does it, to be giving us the whole 10 Commandments. And that's because this is written in Paleographic Hebrew. So it is not the Hebrew of today, which would be, there'd be a lot more letters there. And first of all, in this particular writing, there isn't any vowels, which is something that they invented years later to try and force mankind basically to pronunciate words the way they insisted that we pronunciate them, so there'd be uniformity. However, at this time, this is the way language was for the Hebrews. Now, we're always told that it says, I am the Lord Yahweh. I am the Lord thy God. That's what the first few verses, or a couple of few letters there, is supposed to say. I am the Lord thy God. Now, the first word there actually is not the word of God, is not the word Yahweh, but it is I am the Lord, or I am Yahweh thy God. That's how they translate it. But there's something very curious, friends, I want you to be aware of here. That word is Enki. Yeah, the first word on the Ten Commandments, on those two tablets, is Enki, and you can look that up in your Bibles, and I'm going to show you some pictures here. But before I do that, I want you to look at that. That is an A-N-K-I, or E-N-K-I. And that's the way they write it, of course, in the Hebrew. So, if you look there on your screen, you'll see all the way far to your right, which in Hebrew it reads from right to left. So, the first word, as you can see, is Anoki. Okay, so now remember, the vowel O is supplied. Now this word, this is very interesting. As you can clearly see, this looks very much like the word Anki.
The Greek god Atlas holding up a globe, Earth, and that ends the flat Earth theory. However, he's not supposed to be holding up an Earth. He's supposed to be holding up heaven or sky, which really is, as we know, heaven means space. So if you go back and read the Bibles, etc., just translate the word heaven with space and everything becomes so much clearer. Now, Atlas was forced to hold up this heavens until Heracles, or Hercules, also known as, came along, and Atlas tricked him into holding it for him. Now, the reason why I'm saying all of this is because, just like the Egyptians, their stories, the Greek stories, unlike the Sumerian stories, they are so embellished. You know, for example, for a Greek to say I was walking down the shops, they would make such a big thing about it. You know, oh, there was this giant, there was this, that, and the other. So they really embellished their stories, in my opinion. I still get people saying that I'm totally wrong and they will always trust mainstream. Okay, so let's just have a look for a sec at the History Channel, where they're talking about Homo sapiens arriving in Mesopotamia for the first time. They say 14,000 BC. I say 100,000 BC. And that's because the humans that the Anunnaki created were working in this area for the Anunnaki, and eventually Enki had relationships with two of the women, which both gave children, a boy and a girl, called Adam and Eve. Now, have a look at this. This is recent news that says fossils cave woman 1 million years older than first thought. So when you're sitting there saying I will always trust mainstream over someone like me, when they get the dates wrong by 1 million years, and I go by the ancient tablets, the ancient Greek god Zeus looks just like this man, and he is Hugh Grant, and that's because Netflix is producing a mythological thriller series based on Zeus, the Greek god, and it's a star-studded series that they're going to be producing, and it has Janet McTeer, never heard of him, David something or other, never heard of him, Cliff Curtis, never heard of him, basically people I've never heard of before, so I don't know why it's star-studded, but hey, but it's good that they're actually breaking into the Greek mythology, or history as we know it. Now bear in mind, I am hopefully trying to do, it will be a series of 4 feature films based on the Anunnaki, and the 4th will be based in Greece because of the connection between the Anunnaki and the Greek gods and the Roman gods. So if it all comes to fruition, hopefully my film will be just as good as their series. Before I do deep videos into the afterlife of the ancient Greeks, I find it funny how, you know, Egyptians and Greeks and Romans, etc., all believed in afterlife, and yet modern times we're more skeptical than ever. Now, the interesting thing is the ancient Greeks did actually visit Egypt. So you've got to ask yourself, why weren't they mummifying things like the Egyptians? Because they were there from at least 7th century BC. And I think the reason for that is, by the time the Greeks' civilization had started, which was some couple of thousand years after the sort of times that the Egyptians had their mummification processes, etc., I think the novelty of the afterlife and how to get to it had probably wore off, and they probably realised that the mummification doesn't actually do anything different, and thus the Greeks just buried people as normal. Greek mythology, everything was a lie. They just all made up all these stories about the Kraken. Hang on a minute. The Kraken was a giant squid that could actually pull down boats. Now, is there such a thing that might not be a myth? Well, we have the giant squid, and luckily we have this because they get washed up on the shores. But I mean, our ones are absolutely massive, but could they have been older, say 100,000 years ago, or even 3,000 years ago? Well, yes, they could have been bigger, but over time whaling and shipping, etc., could have killed off the largest ones. So was the Greek myth of a Kraken really just a myth, or was it a giant squid maybe taking down slightly smaller boats than we imagine, but it still could be a possibility? While I was doing a live chat, someone said to me that myths are just myths, because I was talking about Greeks, etc., and they said no, myths are all just myths. So I thought I'd just do some videos showing that myths can actually end up being true. So this one is called the 7 Pagodas of Mahalab. I'm terrible at pronunciation, as you can probably read it there. Now the story goes that there was 7 of these in total, and they were marvellous, and the gods didn't like the fact that these temples were marvellous, so they sent a flood, and 6 of them got destroyed and just left this one. That's the story. It's a myth until 2004, an earthquake caused a tsunami in the Indian Ocean and ended up revealing the remaining temples. So it wasn't a myth after all. So I'm just saying, next time people say a myth is just a myth, when we've got evidence that myths turn into real things, just bear that in mind. In Greek mythology, Hades was what we would call hell. So how come we haven't got a more modern version of hell? I mean, hell, the actual word, is derived from an Anglo-Saxon word dating back to 725 AD, Anno Domini. But that's not a modern word. Again, everything we're taking from the word underworld or hell is ancient, really, in the big scheme of things. Even the North had an underworld called Niflheim. I'm terrible at pronunciations. The Egyptians had a place called Duat. Even Hinduism had a place called Nark. I'm terrible at pronunciations. But the point is, all these different places had what they would call hell, and yet more modern times, why can't we just have one? Because we've never, obviously, no one's ever been there recently, but yet in the past they did. How come? The Greek demigod Hercules, or Heracles, was known for his immense strength. Now, who would win a battle between him and the Norse god Thor? Now, Hercules is a demigod, which means his dad was a god and his mother was mortal, whereas Thor, he was pure god, Asgardian. Now, although the Marvel comics will show you that in 50% of the battles that they've had, Hercules wins and 50% Thor wins, if you go by the actual stats and information that's available to us for real life, you can probably guess who would win. It would be Thor. Now, let's not forget a quick mention to Samson, who was the strongest in the Bible. Again, though, Thor would win. So Greeks, unfortunately, the Norse god has beat you on this occasion. Some things you may or may not know about Hercules. Now, originally he in Greek should be called Heracles, and in Rome Hercules. In fact, his father Zeus had a wife called Hera. Now, she was not his mum, even though some people do think that Hercules' mum was Hera. That was his stepmum. Zeus had a relationship with a human woman called Alcmena, who then gave birth to, well, his name was actually Alcides at the time. But because Zeus was upset that Hera was upset, he decided to change Alcides' name to Heracles to match Hera, his real wife. Now Hercules' sister, half-sister, is Athena, who gives him a sword on one of his journeys. So there's a whole lot more to Hercules I'll go through in the next video. Poor old Hercules, or Heracles. I thought I'd go through the labours of Hercules because there's supposed to be 10, but he ended up doing 12, and I'll go through those individually. Now, he was actually supposed to be the rightful heir to the land that he was at, but unfortunately Hera made sure, that was his stepmom, made sure that his cousin was prematurely born, therefore taking the position that Hercules would have had. So anyway, Hercules obviously was annoying people, including Hera, and she decided to turn him a bit mad. So he went round and, believing that he would see monsters, etc., start hacking them to pieces. And then one day he thought the monsters that was in his house were his monsters, but they weren't. They were actually his wife and daughter. So he killed them, and so therefore he wanted to atone for his sin. After Hercules was tricked by his stepmom Hera to kill his own family, he went to the Oracle of Delphi to try and atone for his sins, and the oracle suggested that he serve Eurystheus. But little did he know that the oracle was actually being controlled by Hera. So anyway, he went to see Eurystheus, who gave him 10 tasks, which eventually ended up being 12, but I'll cover that later. So the first task was to go and stop a giant lion and kill it. So after a huge battle, he finally won. He managed to strangle this giant lion, and using the lion's own claw, he managed to skin the lion and use the lion's coat as his own armour. So that was the first of the 10/12 labours of Hercules. I'll carry on the next video. The second task for Hercules was to kill a 9-headed hydra, probably bigger than this, more like this size. And this hydra was actually raised by Hera in order to kill Hercules one day. And Hercules took his nephew Aeolus with him to the lake called Leoron. I'm terrible at pronunciations. The hydra actually breathed poison, so it was very difficult for them to fight. Every time Hercules would cut off one head, 2 would grow back in its place. Eventually, Aeolus used his bow and arrow and used fire at the actual cut mark to stop, you sort of cauterize it to sort of stop 2 heads growing up back in its place. Hera then sent a giant crab to help the hydra. I'll have to finish this off on the next video, it's running out of time. This video is continuing on from the last video regarding Hercules and his second task. Now this one was to kill a hydra raised by Hera. Now when Hera found out that the hydra was losing the battle, she sent a giant crab to try and help the hydra and kill Hercules. That didn't work. Hercules managed to destroy the giant crab with ease. Now to kill the hydra, they needed to find the one true mortal head. They did it, and when I say they, him and Aeolus. And using the golden sword given to him by his half-sister, he managed to kill the hydra. He went back to Eurystheus, who then said, that doesn't count, you had help with Aeolus, therefore this task is void. So that's why Hercules ended up with 12 tasks. There's another one later on where he also discounted, so in the end Hercules done 12. This is going to change the way you think of a lot of things. So in Greece, ancient Greece, we had Cyclops, we had many different types of half this and half that creatures, and of course we call them myths. Now these are cylinder seals here that were from Sumerian times, which predate the Greece times, the ancient Greece times, by thousands and thousands of years. And these actually have, for example, here is a Cyclops. So this predates, so this means that the Sumerians actually knew about Cyclopses. Now, there is other cylinder seals that also have half this and half that creatures. including harpies, which really then does prove that, in my opinion, that Enki was messing around with DNA, creating, and that's why Enki ends up being Poseidon, who also then created half this and half that creatures. And actually in Sumerian text it talks about Enki saying humans, or Adamu, is his favourite creature. I have some excellent smart people following me, which is great. So this person here has actually beat me to the gun. So I was going to be talking about the constellations, because the last video that I did regarding Hercules talked about Hercules having to fight a Hydra and then a crab that was sent by Hera, his stepmom. And as this person's jumped the gun, I thought I'd do the videos now. So basically, if you've watched my previous videos, you'll see that I prove that the ancient Greeks sometimes talk about things that actually happened thousands of years before the ancient Greeks, and they're actually talking about things that happened in Sumerian times. Now we know the Sumerians dealt with calendars because of the henges that surround the world, and actually the stone tablets talk about it. So when you've got the Hydra constellation, and they do, the Anunnaki did talk about constellations, and the crab constellations, maybe that's what they were talking about. The third task of Hercules, or Heracles, was he had to capture the Ceryneian hind, which was kind of like a stag, very fast, had gold horns. And when he finally caught it after a year of chasing it, the goddess Artemis came down, because she actually used it to help pull her chariot. Now bearing in mind, back in the olden days, chariots used to be the word for spaceship, which is why you've got Eric von Donikin's book Chariots of the Gods. But they also did actually also use proper chariots as well. But anyway, so Artemis, the goddess, was upset that Hercules was taking it. She had a chat with her twin brother Apollo. They both worked out that Hera was the one that was pulling all the strings deliberately to make sure that Hercules would fail these tasks. So they allowed Hercules to take this Ceryneian hind, as long as once he proved that he captured it, he would release it, which he did. I thought I'd do a few videos on Dolores Cannon, some showing where I believe she's correct, and some pointing out, and hopefully you'll agree, where she's not correct. Now, as a researcher, I came across her talking about spirits, etc. in the past, and believed many of what she said, and to this day I still believe she was spot on many things. However, there are some aspects such as aliens, which I'll be going through in the next few videos, where I'll show you where she's got it sort of made it up, where she didn't know the answers. So let's have a listen to this. This is her talking about spirits, or spirit guides, as I call them, because unfortunately people call them angels, and if you've watched my other videos you know there's no such thing as an angel. It is an Anunnaki name, but obviously she wasn't familiar with that, because she's not done any research into Sumerian history as much as I have, and therefore she's gone along with the narrative of the word angel, and unfortunately she's done that with a few things, as we'll go through. But have a listen to this.
But everyone has at least one guardian angel assigned to them when they come in. You can call it guide, guardian angel, whatever you want.
So call it guide. So what she's saying is, yes, she's not 100% sure the word angel is correct, which is fine. There are spirits and there are spirit guardians.
But some people have more than one. It depends on how complicated their life is. You can have as many as 4 or more.
I agree.
Taking care of different parts of your life. But if your life changes, it goes in a different direction, some of these guardian angels will change place, and another one comes in that has more expertise in what you're working.
I agree. I've learned that.
But as a rule, you have at least one main one that stays with you your entire life.
So as you see there, I agree with some of the stuff that she's just said. Keep watching, because I will be doing some more videos with her, talking where I sort of point out where she's got things not quite right, and you'll see she actually sort of messes up on the same video, so keep watching. The 5th labour for Hercules was to clean out stables that belonged to King Agarus. I'm probably pronouncing that terribly wrong. And basically he had over 3,000 cattle and hadn't been cleaned for 30 years. So Hercules had to clean it. Now what he done was he actually rerouted the rivers. to actually wash away all the dung from these cattle. And in return, he was promised that if he could do it within a day, the king promised him a portion of his cattle. But when the king realised how Hercules had done it, he refused to honour his agreement. Actually, later on, Hercules ended up killing him anyway, but that's another story. So when Hercules went back to Eurystheus, he refused also to say that it was one of the labours, so it didn't count because he was accepting payment for it. Guardian Angels. I'm carrying on here with Dolores Cannon, who in the last video actually kind of admitted that the word angel might not be correct because she says, or whatever you want to call it. So obviously we know that the word angel in ancient Sumerian times basically means Anunnaki. Watch my previous videos if you want to know more on that.
One, when they comes into a life, is never alone. They have a guardian angel that's assigned to them.
So they have a guardian spirit, which is from plane 3 of existence. If you watch my videos, you'll know what I'm on about that.
When they come into the life, they have to be with you your entire life. The guardian angel takes care of you and is there to assist you. It cannot interfere.
I agree.
But it's there to assist you. But most people think they're alone, and they don't know there are guardian angels that are assigned to you when you come in.
So that's true. So although you have a soul group, and no, not a soulmate, you actually have a soul group of at least 6 other light being entities that join with you. And bearing in mind, when she's talking about these guardian, her words, angels, but obviously we know they're guardian spirits, what she's not actually saying is they're not there for you per se. They're there for the spirit that's with you, the light energy being that joined with you 3 to 4 months while you was in the womb, and it joins with your pineal gland. They're there to help that, not you. Obviously, if you die, then that light energy being leaves your body and doesn't learn everything it needs to learn. So technically, they're not there for you. You are just a blip in their eternity. Absolutely just a blip. But to help them, they help you, and you think they're helping you when really they're helping the light energy being that's inside you.
And they can't interfere. So they said, if you don't ask us for assistance, we don't have anyone to assist. So they like it if you can talk to them and tell them what you want, and they will take it and they will run with it. They will do miracles if they know what it is you want.
And that's kind of true, because obviously the spirit that's with you is with you to learn. That's all it is there for. And obviously if you're just sitting there doing nothing all day long and not having asked them for help in anything, in relationships or anything, then they don't know how to help you for your spirit that's inside to learn from you. So I hope that all makes sense. The 6th task of Hercules, however, Eurystheus would say there was still 7 left because of the last one. Watch my videos to find out. So this one was to do with the birds of Stymphalia. And these birds were trained by Ares to actually kill man. So Hercules went off to try and find them. He found them in a marshy area and couldn't actually get to them because the marsh, every time he walked on the marsh, he would start to sink. So Athena appeared suddenly, and gave him a rattle. So he would then shake the rattle, and with his bow and arrows dipped in the blood from the Hydra, watch my previous videos, the poison blood, he could then shoot down these birds that eat men or kill men. Some escaped and some died, so he came back as a victor, and that was another task done. I'll be honest, I am slightly sad that people don't think, they just want to say God, but obviously when you have that question there is who made the Anunnaki. Let me just explain something that really should have been explained at school, or you should have paid attention if they did. Human body is made of chemicals. There's no denying that. Rocks are made of chemicals. Mud, you get where I'm going with this, is made of chemicals. Space even has chemicals. So when you have a moon, yes, moon was here back then, it says so in the Yuma Elish. which is ancient text. When you have a moon that creates tides, if the water was stagnant, we wouldn't have two chemicals bashing into each other. But because the moon was here, we had a tide which created movement, and that created life when two chemicals or more touched each other. Okay, so another video here with Dolores Cannon. This one is where I start to slightly disagree with her, and have a watch and see what you think.
Angels are just, they call the messengers.
Yeah, it's messengers because that's the actual translation in Hebrew of an angel, which really should be an Anunnaki, archangel, pilot, and so on. So, yes, you know, she's understood that there's a translation meaning messenger, but unfortunately she still uses the word angel when it should be spirit.
This is what they really are. They are living on the other side, and many of them have never wanted to reincarnate.
So you see there she's talking about the other side. So it's angels, obviously. You never hear an angel saying they're on the other side as such, but you hear dead people are on the other side, or spirits are on the other side. That's what you hear all the time. So obviously she's using the word angel, but really she's talking about spirits because everything matches up to a spirit on the other side.
Into human form. They have no desire to. They like to stay over there and mind the store, take care of the things that are going on Earth. But they're just another being.
She's spot on there. They are a light being, just like the ones that join with us 3 to 4 months in the mother's womb. These ones, the guardian spirits, are the ones that's moved on up and learnt enough. They need to continuously learn from us. And to be able to move up the different planes of existence, and see the ones, the guardian spirit ones, are on the 3rd level, shall we say.
That is there, and they're real. And a lot of times guardian angels are deceased relatives, or things that have gone on, and their job is they decide, I want to take care of this person that they were close to. And
so there's a slight problem there, because obviously, as you know, with light energy spirits, beings, they have multiple lives. In other words, they go round and round and round. So it's not the same person that's been with. It's many different people. So for one of those to then come through and say, hey, I want to be a guardian spirit, when they reach level 3, out of all of the probably thousands or hundreds of thousands of lives that light energy beings already been with, so for one of them to suddenly push through and say, I want, over everyone else that's inside that hard drive, it's like a hard drive basically, all different memories. You could take that hard drive to loads of different computers, but it doesn't mean that the files were originally created from that other computer. It means that you can take that hard drive around with you, and that's what a light energy being is. So going along with, some of them possibly are relatives, guardian spirits, but I wouldn't say all of them are. How many languages can you speak? Can you even read ancient Sumerian? Well, don't worry. Now in the British Museum they have been photographing the 130-odd thousand of these clay tablets, and have an AI that's actually now reading the information off of the clay tablets. No one in the British Museum has sat and read the 130,000 of these tablets, simply because there's only a handful of people in the British Museum that can actually read Sumerian cuneiform, and they don't have all day to sit and read and translate the tablets. So now we have AI. The problem we have is they will not release, obviously, sensitive information where it talks about Nibiru, or where it talks about spaceships and chariots, as they used to be actually translated. So there will be some redactions, which is sad, but at least we will get some more information from the British Museum. Okay, so this video is with Dolores Cannon talking about aliens, and this is one where you'll see I vehemently disagree with her.
if there is a message from them, is that they do want us to join with them eventually. But they want us to know we are children of the stars. We have been created and taken care of since the beginning of time.
Okay, so what she's saying is we have been created since, basically, and taken care of us since the beginning of time. That doesn't work for me, unfortunately, because we, as a human species, and you shall carry on and talking about the human species as opposed to dinosaurs or anything else, bearing in mind humans have only been here a blip, a blink of an eye compared to every other species on this planet. So when she says that aliens created us from the beginning of everything, we've got actual records, written records of when humans were created, and that was because of the Anunnaki. So prior to the Anunnaki, there were hominids, and prior to the hominids, there was obviously other animals and all sorts of things. So for her to turn around and say what she just said, and I'm just going to play it one more time now that you understand where I'm coming from, because we've got records of things, and humans weren't here since the beginning of everything.
Children of the stars, we have been created and taken care of since the beginning of time.
Since the beginning, we haven't been. You know that. We all know that humans haven't been here since the beginning of the time. So for her to come out with that is unfortunately wrong. I mean, it's just logical. Everyone knows that humans have not been here. If we have, we would have been flying around in craft like the aliens have. You know, we're the new kids on the block.
They have no desire to harm us. They are caretakers, and they love the species because they...
I wouldn't agree they're our caretakers. I mean, if you actually look at the records and the information, it turns out the little greys only turned up 3,000 years BC, so some of them didn't even know we existed. Obviously, the Anunnaki did, because they created us 300,000 years ago, so again, not beginning of time.
They love the way it's developing. They don't like what we're doing. But if there's a message, it's to let people know that they are not negative and they are here to help us. They will eventually appear in mass, but it won't be until we get our act together. And at that time...
I kind of disagree with that. I think it's only because they deal with our military and they deal with our leaders, etc. So I think it's only when our leaders tell them that we're ready, and me and you won't be here when that happens. So you see, there's some things with Dolores that I think even you can probably understand now, that she's not 100% sure on UFOs, but spirit she's very good at. I did a video a while back on the Baltic, what looked like a UFO or Millennium Falcon in the ocean. And I sort of said, why didn't they go back and look? Well, they actually did go back. They actually took a documentary crew with them, filming, and they went there and they took a dive down. They only ended up having one opportunity for one dive because of mishaps, etc. And when the guy touched it, it was black. Whatever it was black. And they cut a piece off near the edge and brought it back. Turns out it looks like the top, at least the top layer of it, is now rock. Whether or not it was formed over millennia. Now I'm going to run out of time here, so this will have to carry on the second one. But please watch the second one; it's fascinating. But Fox News then said, no, it's rock, because they said it was rock, and there's nothing to see here. Watch the next video; it's really. Following on from my last video about the Baltic UFO in the middle of the ocean, when Fox News heard that they had found a bit of black rock attached to whatever this is, they then put a video out saying that it's all rock, nothing to see here. Then the poor people that were actually doing the excavations or salvaging, trying to find out what it is, started getting death threats to their family as well. Now, bearing in mind Fox News is owned by elites, you got to wonder that the death threats are not by normal people, but by people that don't want them to go back and actually find out what it really is. In other words, elites. Now, the next bit is amazing. So they actually managed to get the LiDAR information type thing that they had, and you see this is a mountain in the ocean, and something came skidding along, smashed right through the mountain, ended up and landed there, which is the actual object itself. So was that a crashed craft? This is the third video regarding the UFO at the bottom of the ocean in the Baltic Sea. Now, you can watch the actual full documentary, The Mystery of the Giant Object Underneath the Baltic Sea. That's what it's called, The Mystery of the Giant Object Underneath the Baltic Sea. So you can watch that on YouTube. It's about 56 minutes. Now, there's things in there that they also say that I've not mentioned already, such as the temperature around the object or craft was normal until you actually get near it, and then it becomes freezing, actually freezing water, which is really weird, because it's technically, why does this suddenly make the water frozen? And also it talks about, you'll see on the documentary if you watch it, about the Swedish Navy watching them as they do their search pattern. In other words, probably waiting for them to leave so they can go and dig this thing up. So do go and watch it, The Mystery of the Giant Object Underneath the Baltic Sea. The seventh task of Hercules was the Cretan Bull. For that he had to go to Crete, and the bull was actually owned by King Minos. So he asked King Minos could he take the bull. And funny enough, King Minos said yes, because that bull was causing so much problems there that he's actually glad to see it go. So Hercules then took it back to Eurystheus, gave it to him, who then locked it up into a stable. But it did, a couple of years later, apparently it broke free of that stable and went on a rampage and started causing more problems around the village, and eventually it was killed, which was quite sad because it was probably living better before Hercules got involved. The eighth task of Hercules was the horses of Diomedes. Now, Diomedes was actually a king and in fact the son of Ares. And the horses were man-eating. Don't worry, more modern times they would have eaten any of the 100,000 different genders, so you don't have to feel left out. Now, when Hercules went there, he took a few people with him, and when the king found out that Hercules was trying to get hold of his horses, him and his soldiers came chasing after Hercules. So Hercules had to leave one of his people behind to stay with the horses while they went off to fight. Hercules came back. That person that had left with the horses was eaten by the horses. Hercules got so annoyed, he went and took the king and fed him to the horses. He then took the horses back to Eurystheus, who then supposedly either sacrificed them to Hera or let them free to roam in fields. Keep watching to the end of this video as I show we may actually have a UFO here on Earth that we've all seen but don't know. So this here is a rock that's in the shape of a cigar, which is very unusual, and it came through our solar system a few years back, and it was named the Oumuamua. I think that's Hawaiian. And since the 80s, I've heard stories that aliens actually dig out rocks from meteorites and from planets, and then hollow those rocks out and use them as spacecraft, which makes a lot more sense because obviously you've got no moving parts and no nuts and bolts to go wrong. You've just got a solid thing, and then you just hollow it out, and it makes a lot more sense. Now, bear that in mind, that could be a craft, and in fact, Scientific America actually even says, because it slowed down and speeded up, that it may be alien technology. So, craft out of stone. Hold that thought. Now we move over to the Baltic Sea, and this is a scan. This is probably some of these are knocked up just to give better information, but this isn't what you actually see, but you get the point. It's basically like that, and it's possibly made of rock. We're not 100% sure. They still need to do more tests, but look at the gap that it's got, which is quite interesting, isn't it? I don't know if you can see the gap there. Now move on to NASA. Quite a few years back, they accidentally let a tether go. In other words, a sort of a long 12-mile tether that they was connected to something. It snapped and it went off into space. And this is what happens. These craft suddenly appear out of nowhere, and this tether is 12 miles long, which means these are about 3 miles long. Some of them that they actually go behind it, and some go in front of it. But look at the gap. Isn't that interesting? They've all got gaps. So add the fact that the Oumuamua is made of stone. Add the fact that there's meteorites in space that have that are made of stone. Add to the fact you've now got a gap, which is very similar to the gap there. Obviously these are blurry because it wasn't focused and it's quite a distance away. That's 12 miles. But when you can see the gaps on this video, on those images that suddenly appear, look, they've all just suddenly started appearing, which means they are some sort of intelligent life. Come and see what's going on with this tether. So, what do you think? Alien craft or not? The ninth task of Hercules was to get the girdle from the daughter of Ares, which was Hippolyta. I'm pronouncing that wrong, but she was the queen of the Amazons. So Hercules went there, and she was actually hospitable to him and was going to give him the actual girdle. But Hera, Hercules' stepmother, pretended she was one of the Amazon women and started spreading rumours that Hercules was there to kidnap the queen. So then when the queen found out, she went to confront Hercules, but as she went with all her army, Hercules thought this was a trap and then ended up having to fight her and killed her, and then took the girdle back. So there you go. It's quite a sad story, really, because all because of Hera. Bad Hera. No one likes Hera anymore. Boo. The 11th task of Hercules. Now, as you know, he should have only done 10, but Eurystheus had said that 2 of those other ones that he done were void for various reasons. So in this one, the 11th, was to go and get golden apples from the garden of Hesperides. Now, the actual apples belonged to Hera, which was his stepmom, and obviously that made it a bit difficult. So there's some stories say that Hercules managed to get Atlas to go and get the apples, but then there's other stories that say Hercules himself went and got the apples and had a big battle with Serpent, I think it was, and some other people that were there protecting them. And then he managed to get the apples and took them back, and then he just had one more task left. So watch the next video to find out. I'm going to have to address this because I think this is a bit too stupid for people to even possibly believe, but people do. So they believe that because we've now got the technology to do green screen, that's how it was done back in the 50s. Obviously, we didn't have computers back then. So they're saying that because we can do green screen, that's how NASA does it all the time, and therefore there is no space. They just pretend that these objects float in space. Now, I do agree NASA lies, but also we've got the technology to make dinosaurs look real. Doesn't mean they're real right now. So in other words, just because we can do green screen now doesn't mean that's how it's done. So let's go back and imagine in the 50s, NASA contacting, in the Cold War era, ringing up Russia. Hey, Russia, we hear you're going to be sending up some rockets. Do us a favour. Pretend that there's no atmosphere up there. And the Russians would say, why? What benefit would that be? Well, we know you're going to be sending up rockets. We know you're going to hit the dome. Yes, we're going to hit the dome and it's going to cost us loads of money, but we're going to keep doing it because it's a bit of a giggle. No, all right, yes, it's going to hit the dome, but we forget the fact that it hits the dome, even though there's, between me and you, there's no dome. Firmament actually meant atmosphere if you go back to the proper original text. But anyway, so the Russians would then say, okay, but what benefit do we have pretending that there's weightlessness? And the NASA will say, well, there's no benefit really because normal people don't go into space, but it's a bit of a giggle. Okay, Russians say, we'll do that. We'll tell China and everyone to start using rope and string and cat wire to pretend that things are floating. That'll be good. Yes, good. And then lo and behold, later on, they have a thing called the Vomit Comet, which is a craft that actually produces weightlessness. So, NASA, that's a bit of luck. We kind of pretended there was no atmosphere up there and everything was weightlessness. Now we've got a rocket or a plane that can produce weightlessness. So that was a bit of coincidence, isn't it, that we faked that? And anyway, then you have people saying that like this here is a rocket supposedly hitting the firmament, which again, if you go back to the ancient text, it's atmosphere. And Anunnaki struggled to get through the atmosphere. So basically this rocket malfunctioned and headed straight back towards Earth, and they say that hit the dome, whereas here, back in Apollo 11's time, people with telescopes could actually see it go further than the rocket that supposedly hit the thing. So is the dome all bumpy, in which case this got past that bit, that one got past? You see, just please start using logic. Doesn't make sense for everyone around the world to start pretending that there's no weightlessness, there's weightlessness. It just, help, let me off this planet, please. The globe, let me off the globe. The video you're about to watch after I finish talking is a clip from a video that's on my Patreon page, and it's called Everything You Need to Know About Spirits. Now there's 3 segments at the moment, and every week there's another segment. Now there's loads of videos on my Patreon page already. There's 41, but the clip you'll be watching is from segment 1, and it's going through absolutely everything you need to know about spirits. So hopefully you like it. If you do like it, what you see in a second, the clip of it, feel free to watch the longer video, way longer, on my Patreon page. which is called Our True History. Thank you very much. The 12th and final task of Hercules was to bring back the heads of Cerberus, which was a three-headed hound that lived in Hades, which is the underworld. He went there, and Athena told him that he would have to talk to Hades in order to be allowed to kill it, otherwise it's not going to end well for Hercules. So Hercules had a word with Hades. Hades said you could borrow the Cerberus if you can wrestle it and, you know, subdue it, and then take it back and prove that you've done it. So he did that. He managed to wrestle it, took it back, and that ended his 12th labour. And later on, Hercules, there's a few different versions of this, but later on Hercules remarried, and his new wife was a bit too jealous and covered his clothes in the Hydra's poison, which killed Hercules, and Zeus took his body up to heaven, and he was now classed as a god. This video is really important for anyone to watch because it kind of proves something I was saying before. Now, I said that Ra is an Anunnaki named Marduk, and Ra in Egyptian times. And I said the reason why I believe, this is my own conclusion, that the depiction of him being brown, whereas the Anunnakis were pale skin, is because they worked out in the Middle East in the sun for hundreds of thousands of years and got tanned, whereas his daughters, and it seems the females, are generally marked down as a paler colour. Now, obviously people laughed at me when I said that I think they were suntanned, but of course, you know, hundreds of thousands of years in the Middle East, chances are you will get suntan. Now have a listen to this. This is an expert here, Spencer McDaniel. Have a listen to this expert.
Furthermore, as strange as it may seem to us, the ancient Greeks and Romans often associated skin color less with race and more with gender, because in those times it was darker skin was associated with men and paler skin was associated with women, because men were expected to work outside and get tanned, and women were expected to remain indoors and remain pale. And so Greek and Roman artists actually sometimes use skin color as an artistic convention to demarcate gender.
So that's exactly what I was pretty much saying before, so I kind of feel vindicated once again, as always. So that would explain why Marduk, as an Anunnaki, is depicted as a darker skin compared to what he would actually have been. So I hope that makes sense. Thank you. Ancient India and aliens. I was going to go and cover ancient Roman aliens, but to be honest, you can learn as much as you want from Greeks, because the Greeks were the same gods, etc. So moving on to ancient Indian, I'm going to hopefully show you in the next few videos things that you don't know about regarding aliens and Indians. So for example, look at this here. You never guess where they get their turbans from. Yes, the Anunnaki. If you look at all the drawings of the Anunnaki and carvings and statues, etc., you see that they actually do wear turbans. But not just that, I'm also going to explain and hopefully and showing you stuff that you've never seen before, such as their craft and how it works and how it's connected to the Anunnaki and how their temples are connected to the Anunnaki and who was the one that went over from Mesopotamia to India, etc. So follow for more. Ancient India did have Anunnaki, which were aliens. Now, to work out who was there, we need to know the date. So we'll go through that in the next video, but watch this video for a minute.
Ancient temple at Lepakshi, and here we can see the strange carving that shows a very unique deity. You can see that it has a reptilian face, looking almost like a lizard, and the hand gesture shows a blessing posture. When I asked the locals who this god is, they told me it is called Anunaga. It sounds very similar to Anunnaki, the gods well known.
Okay, so first of all, hand in blessing position. The Anunnaki never blessed anyone. we were the ones that blessed the Anunnaki. So for an Anunnaki to be sitting there praying to themselves is a bit stupid. Also, anyone that's done any research actually works out that this actually was a gift for those that were heroes. They actually got a helmet and wings, which is true, explains why that's there. But also, when you look at carvings of Anunnaki, they are not reptilian. They're just not. I mean, I can go through so many pictures of them. Is that a reptilian? No. Is that a reptilian giant compared to humans? No. No. Now, this one is, if you go by Zecharia Sitchin, this was supposed to be Ayana with her hair done up, but somehow it got all squashed, which is understandable over a long period of time and made out of clay. Of course, people then said, well, that's reptilian, therefore they're all reptilians, even though, you know, the proportions, look at this is nothing like what the actual carvings are for the Anunnaki. Everything is symmetrically perfect. So that, when you get that one, which is kind of like almost like a kid's doing, compared to these ones, which are absolutely fantastic. This is fantastic. Everything is fantastic in terms of proportions for the Anunnaki, and then you get that odd one there that I was just showing you, which people seem to think there was a reptilian. The Anunnaki never described themselves as reptilian. Also, we've got tablets that literally say that we're in their image. We have those in the British Museum. So when we're in their image, I don't see me being a reptilian of any kind. And as you see here, these are all absolutely stunning carvings, which I certainly couldn't do today. So when you have one that's a bit off, you know, out of clay that does melt, it doesn't mean they're reptilian. So keep watching for more ancient Indian videos about Anunnaki. Ancient aliens, Anunnaki in India. First, we need to know how they got from Africa to India and when. So as you can see here, you can actually physically walk from Africa to India, which gives us our starting place of Africa, because we know that from ancient texts that's in the British Museum that says life started in Africa as Homo sapiens sapiens, and that's because of the Anunnaki genetically modified Neanderthal there. But so when did the first people actually arrive? This is what mainstream say, 65,000 years ago. That's fine, because the first people in Africa were 300,000 years ago, so that's no problem at all. That makes sense. Now, just because it's 65,000 years ago doesn't mean the Anunnaki were there at that point. They wasn't. They came along a lot later. I'm going to have to do this in two parts because it's running out. But basically, this here is the oldest known building, and this dates only the third. Following on from my last video about ancient aliens in India, this is a building called Sanchi, and it's the oldest, one of the oldest known buildings in India, and it's from the 3rd century BCE. If you watch my previous video, we know that humans were in India way before the 3rd century BCE. So what makes me think this was an Anunnaki building? First of all, it's a place of worship. Now, the Anunnaki did not have religion. They just wanted you to worship them because they were technically smarter than we were, because they created us. So this building here is, wait for it, is made from, you guessed it, sandstone. And if you watch my other videos, you know that sandstone has quartz in it. And if you realise that quartz has a resonance frequency, that all the major so Stonehenge, Great Pyramids, etc., all of those buildings, ancient buildings that we will find struggle to create, had quartz in, and that's because it was levitation using frequency. Before I go through the Indian gods in relation to who they actually are as Anunnaki, I thought we'd better just look back at this building that I just mentioned in the previous videos. It's a bit of too much of a coincidence that they actually use the same materials as e.g. quartz as all the other major structures around the world that suddenly sprang up. In other words, why was the first building a temple of some description as opposed to just people's houses? But the dates, we have to wonder if the dates are wrong here, because we know mainstream get things wrong. Now, if you look here, mummies older than we first thought. In other words, they think that they're 1,000 years earlier than what they've actually believed. Now, these have got minerals and organic stuff in them which can be radio and carbon dated, whereas stone can't. So if they've got these dates wrong, then the chances are we've been lied to, or this is... Is there any mention in ancient India of the Anunnaki, or what they were doing? Well, actually, yes. In the Ayurveda, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, there is mention that there is beings that came, demigods, that were here to mine for gold, which is funny because that's exactly what the Sumerian texts say. Now, what else is there? Vimanas, which is also mentioned in that same text, which is a flying object. In other words, something that's man-made or alien-made. Something else that's also mentioned in that same text is a destructive weapon. And now I think it's this almost described as a missile, which would then cause radiation burns, people's fingernails to fall off, their hair, etc. Now, where have we else have we heard that? Yes, the Bible, which was a plague, but it really wasn't. It was a nuke. And also Sumerians used nukes. Why would the Anunnaki want to be in India? Well, we've got kind of records showing that they were in Indus Valley, and I'll go through that in the next few videos. But when you look at where Mesopotamia, which is where the Anunnaki were, the Indus Valley is basically the bottom of it. So there's no real shock that they would have branched out. Now, this was actually given to one of the Anunnakis, and I'll explain in the next video who it was that got given this. Now, after the flood, they split the areas up into 4. Sumer was the first one, which is why we have the Sumerian as the oldest known laws and languages, etc., etc. This was actually the 4th one that was given to someone. And let's have a look when they were given it. Now, if you go by Wikipedia, it says 3,300. If you go by Live Science, it's 5,000 years ago. Now, my actual estimate is approximately 6,000 years ago. Who was the alien god or goddess of India? Well, it wasn't actually called India back then, but Inanna was, and she was the granddaughter of Enlil. And if you've done your homework, you'll know that she was very warlike and would actually want to attack and try and get more and more land. She was also known as Ishtar, and she was also known as Aphrodite. But in India, she was known as Kali. And if you look down here, she's got a lion with her. That's Inanna. And of course, obviously, we must have, which we do, sculptures of Kali with lions as well. And Ishtar, if you look at the picture there, you can kind of see the similarities between the pose. Now, the Anunnakis all had certain poses that they would do at certain times. And these poses, as you can probably tell, is very reminiscent of an Indian pose for one of their gods. Following on from my last video about India and Ayana, who was the Anunnaki goddess, and she was given the 4th territory when they split the territories up. The first being Sumer, which was where actually Enlil was the leader, and Ayana was the leader of the Indus Valley, the 4th territory. Now, when she went there, she took people from Mesopotamia. Now, those people were dark-skinned, and she took people from there, and somehow they ended up being changed slightly into lighter skin, not pale. In other words, they ended up looking like Indian people as opposed to African people. And they were called the Aryans. I'll spell that Aryan. Now, that's because I'm going to have to finish this in the next video. To find out how we've got Indian people, for example, compared to African people, we have to go back to Africa 300,000 years ago when the Anunnaki created the first Homo sapiens sapien from Neanderthal DNA and their own alien DNA. And they created 7 men, 7 women, which then bred over and over and over again. The Anunnaki used them to mine for gold here. But over the period of time, the Anunnaki also then took them to Mesopotamia to help with some of the other duties there with the other Anunnaki, but also some of them ended up traveling themselves. So we've got a record of when they actually arrived here in India, and that was approximately 50 to 60,000 years ago. Now, by the time Inanna took people here from here 10,000 years ago, there was a mixture of skin colour now, because I'll follow in the next video. Following on from my previous videos about India and Africa and how the Indian people were the Indian people, so we've got the proof that the Africans went to India and settled there 50 to 60,000 years ago. Now, prior to that, 100,000 years ago, is when the Anunnaki started to breed with the African women, and that gave rise to the olive-skinned people in Mesopotamia, which is Iraq, Middle East, basically. So we've got the darker-skinned African people still living there. We've now got olive-skinned people living there, and we've got the darker-skinned people over in Africa. So Ayana, who was given the Indus Valley as the area that out of the 4 locations that was given, she was given the Indus Valley. She took with her some of the olive-skinned people who then bred with the Africans that were already there. It's no surprise then that Indian people that wear turbans, if their god, their original god, was Inanna, who happens to wear, you guessed it, a turban. They did actually wear them, not just Ayana, but other Anunnaki wore them. So we're basically now at the period where Inanna has taken olive-skinned people to India compared to the African people. And they were called the Irans, pronounced probably wrong, the name originally given to the people who were said to speak an Arak, I'm terrible at pronunciation, Indo-European language, who were thought to have settled in prehistoric times from ancient Iraq and northern India subcontinent, which basically means that they were originally from Mesopotamia, which is what I just basically said in the previous video. So it's now all making sense. However, follow for the next video, there's something interesting. This is interesting because these islands here are actually part of India, from what I understand. Now, these islands have in previous times had different type of people there. When I say different type of people, some tribes in those islands, as you read here, carry 2 to 3% genes from the unknown hominid source. In other words, my guess is that there was probably not necessarily Devisons or I can never pronounce stuff, or Homo erectus or Homo florensis, etc., but possibly another hominid that was there. So when the African people finally got there, they bred with whatever species was there, just as all over the world different species bred with different species of hominid, including Homo sapiens sapien. So my guess is there was previously a hominid there that we don't know what it was, and it died out. I am now ready to tell you where Atlantis is. Now, if you've watched my previous videos on Atlantis, you know who the Atlanteans are, because I worked it out unlike everyone else, and I have had 0 people debunk that. So I know it sounds like I'm being big-headed, but when you spend all your life researching and you're the only one that comes up with stuff, then hey, I will pat myself on the back, and I will be telling you in the next video where Atlantis is. Before I tell you where I believe Atlantis is, we need to look at where the other researchers go wrong to work out whether I'm the right one and the only person that's ever figured it out. And the reason for that is because they go by Plato, and Plato was around 348 BCE, and Plato talks about Atlantis being 9,000 years before his time. So if we have a look here, around 11,000 to 12,000 years ago, we were hunter-gatherers. In other words, Uggs, lots of Uggs as their language. In other words, no written language, etc. came until thousands and thousands of years later, which means everything would be verbal unless we've got proof that there was a written language, even by the Atlanteans themselves, which we don't. So we have to assume then that the information is verbal. Now, in Plato's description, he says that Atlantis is 3,100 miles away from Athens. Now, people go by this, and this is what's crazy. They shouldn't do that, because not only are these our ancestors 9,000 years ago were Ugg people, Ugg. Also, Athens didn't actually come into existence until then. So that's a few thousand years, well, 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 years before Athens actually was even founded. So how they could work out where Athens was, it wouldn't even been called Athens 9,000 years before that, or 8,700 years, whatever it is, before that. So this is why researchers go way wrong when they're looking at everything to do with Plato's writings. And obviously, if you've read or listened to an audiobook of Plato's writing, you will come across the fact that he pinpoints things so accurately that there's so much information that would have been passed down Chinese whispers from 9,000 years to an Egyptian priest who gave it to a friend of Plato's, who then gave it to Plato. And they described so much in so much detail: smells, colours, depth of lakes. No, absolutely no. Now, the other problem is, here it says in Plato's, the founders of Atlantis were said to be half god, half human. Now, we have to see whether there was any other writings out there, and funny enough, there was. Emerald Tablets of Thoth talk about Ningazida, or Thoth, same person, and obviously he had offspring, so he was an Anunnaki, he was a god, and he had offspring which would have been demigods, which would have also been in that era. Now, if you've watched my previous video about who the Anunnaki were, you know I'm referring to the concentric circles. I'm going to run out of time here. Keep watching, because hopefully you're now understanding that you can't fully believe everything in Plato's version, which is what a lot of people, virtually everyone, bases their research. As I get closer to telling you where I believe Atlantis is, I really need you to understand why I got to that conclusion, because if I just told you where it is, you'd be going, that doesn't make sense. But as you've already seen in my previous video, I prove that the other researchers, unfortunately, have been following Plato and therefore have got it wrong. So the reason why I feel I've got it right is because I've gone through these steps. So basically, who were the players at the time? Now, if you watch one of my earlier videos, I prove again who the Atlanteans were. No one's debunked it. Do we have any records of destruction 9,000 years ago? Well, actually we do, and that's another reason why I believe we know where it is. And where were the players? Really important, because obviously where the other people were on Earth relates to where Atlantis is, believe it or not. And have we found anything under the water? In other words, anything sunk? Yes, 900 videos. Thank you so much to all of you guys, my followers, the casual people, and even the people that sort of want to debate or tell me facts, and then I ask them for proof of those facts and then they disappear. But even those I welcome. Now, what's going to happen in the following videos? Well, I'm going to carry on with the ancient India. Hopefully you're enjoying those videos at the moment. I'm enjoying making them, and I'll be going through their Vimanas and all sorts of things that you may not even know about ancient India, so it's quite interesting. And then obviously we're going to move over to Scandinavian history, which is where we get Thor, etc. And then I'm going to be going around different countries, England, Australia, and various different places, Teotihuacan, you name it, I'll go there, Göbekli Tepe, etc. So there's so much more to learn, as well as obviously catching back up with more modern ufology type stuff. So keep watching and follow. I've just started a Facebook group called Our True History. I know there's some people out there that want to send me pictures of what they've seen, etc., UFOs. So I thought a Facebook group, there's no one on their own, just me. So feel free to join Our True History on Facebook. Please think before you post a comment like that. So this guy here is a Christian author, makes money selling books about God. Let's be honest, do you think he's going to agree with Sitchin? So Sitchin says there's aliens, he says no, there's God. You're going to get him to debunk him so he can sell more books. That's logical. So let's have a look at some of the things that he says. So here it says, if the planet, in other words Nibiru, their home planet, is real, no cuneiform tablet describes a planet by any name beyond Pluto. Now what this person, I was going to be rude there, Michael, hasn't done, he hasn't gone to the Iraq Museum and looked through hundreds of thousands of tablets and then said, no, I can't find it. Bearing in mind there's tablets in the Louvre, there's tablets in Nineveh Library, there's tablets in the British Museum. There is basically Sumerian cuneiform tablets all over the world. Hundreds of thousands of them. So he's not gone everywhere and read them, because if he went everywhere, he'd be frightened that he'd actually find the actual correct tablets. So he's not going to do that. So just by the process of not looking, he can then on his website say there is no tablet that says XYZ. But if he looked, he would find it just as obviously Sitchin did. Now, the Iraq Museum, for example, do not describe, so this is their website, they do not describe each tablet. In other words, you would have to go there and read it. So that's another reason why this numpty's wrong. Oh, did I call him a numpty? What a shame. So there's also, bearing in mind, Sitchin has been studying Sumerian for at least the 60s. So he's obviously been around a bit. And whereas this person's probably only just started researching what Sitchin's talking about. Now, the tablets here, it says, tablets are part of a cache of thousands that were looted artifacts purchased by Hobby Lobby and seized by the government. So, in other words, when you can't find tablets, do not blame Sitchin. There's governments as well as supposed groups that go into Iraq and smash them up, etc. So again, another reason why Sitchin's right. Now, also what this numpty, done it again, probably didn't realise is that there's cuneiform tablets in the Morgan Library that actually depict all the correct amount of stars and planets and moons in our solar system, which includes their own planet. So all you have to do, people, is just have a little bit of common sense. So when you've got someone that's a Bible person, he is going to try his hardest. So just put that out of your head. Unless you've done the research, because obviously you're going by someone else, do what I do. I do the research. You do it now. Your turn. So enough. Fed up. What's your opinion on this? I think this is going to be a fake setup. So let me explain it. Zahi Hawass is saying he believes the body of the Pharaoh Khufu, which is inside the Great Pyramid, he believes it's inside there, underneath the Queen's chamber. Now, no mummies have ever been found in any pyramid whatsoever. Watch my videos, I totally prove that. And so, obviously, the pyramids were not tombs. I mean, just look at what a tomb looks like, inside a tomb. There's nothing inside a pyramid, but this is what's inside a tomb, all the writings and everything. So I'm of the opinion that they're going to try and pretend there's a body using LiDAR, etc., which is what's happening at the moment at the Great Pyramids. They're actually doing more tests. So if they pretend there's a body in there, that ends the ancient aliens. So I think they're faking it. The video you're about to watch after I finish talking is a clip from a video that's on my Patreon page, and it's called Everything You Need to Know About Spirits. Now, there's 3 segments at the moment, and every week there's another segment. Now, there's loads of videos on my Patreon page already. There's 41. But so the clip you'll be watching is from segment 1, and it's going through absolutely everything you need to know about spirits. So hopefully you like it. If you do like it, what you see in a second, the clip of it, feel free to watch the longer video, way longer, on my Patreon page, which is called Our True History. Thank you very much. Was there really a Big Bang, and what's that got to do with spirits? It's when spirits first started. Stephen Hawking suggested that if the universe is expanding, then if we rewind it, we would see it go back to a single point of time. Now, is that the only reference we have to the Big Bang? Actually, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth talk about the Big Bang. Thoth was a god in ancient Egyptian times. The text for the Emerald Tablets first appeared in a number of early medieval Arabic sources, the oldest of which dates to the late 8th or 9th century. It was translated into Latin several times in the 12th and 13th century. Numerous interpretation and commentaries followed. There were 10 tablets which were divided into 13 parts. The last 2 are so great and far-reaching in their importance that at present it is forbidden to release them to the world at large, so it's claimed. Because of these translations by different people over centuries, we can say with some degree of certainty that the translations copied something. Sadly, the original tablets have been lost or hid away from view. This is the text about the start of the universe from the Emerald Tablets. In the beginning there was void and nothingness, a timeless, spaceless, nothingness, and into nothingness came a thought, purposeful, all-pervading, and it filled the void. There existed no matter, only force, a movement, a vortex of vibration, of purposeful thought that filled the void. Although the creation of the universe in the tablets come from a thought, it's the only thing we have to go on. And it actually makes sense, because everything in the physical world has a top, bottom and two sides, yet the universe may not. Only a thought is endless. Just a few simple questions. I can't answer them, but I'm sure you guys can. So first of all, if there's a dome, why are they sending rockets up? What's the benefit if they're going to waste money when it hits the top and breaks? Now, I have been told that someone said that they're trying to break free out the top. But why not do it to the side? That's a lot easier than it is sending rockets up. So that's the first question. Second question is, why advertise that you're sending up rockets to up in the sky if you're trying to do it quietly and we're not supposed to know there's a dome? So that's the second question, because obviously we've got people sending up rockets all the time. So what, why are they notifying us that they're sending it up to hit the dome? So answer that one. That's the second question. Halley's Comet is my favourite one that no one ever answers. So Halley's Comet comes around every 70 odd years. So if you can tell me who the person is every 70 years that sends Halley's Comet up inside the dome, because if it's outside the dome, then there's space. And of course there's people out there that say there's no such thing as space. And then they say there's water, but obviously we can see the trail of ice from Halley's Comet, in which case it's space still. So who's the person that sends it up and every 70 odd years? Because it's every... We know about Halley's Comet for thousands of years. There's actually a written record. So if you could answer that, that would be cool. And the final piece to the resistance one. Now this is a amateur, not NASA, amateur rocket up in America, which would be pretty much almost in the middle of your flat Earth. So let's have a look at this. Now as you see, the camera shows an equal distance everybody. Not one side further than the other. And the reason for that is because it's on a ball. Now this is another amateur rocket, this time in Australia, which is about 4,000 miles from the edge, but 20,000 miles from the other side. So in other words, it shouldn't be in the middle. And then when you watch, unfortunately, there we are, steady shot there. So it's equal, and you only get it equal if you're in a ball. On a ball. So if no one's ever going to answer that one, that's because you can't answer why it's equal, because obviously on a ball it's always going to be equal. So yeah, there you go. So no one's going to answer those. So let's all forget the flat Earth and the dome and just get on with our lives. Right, don't hate me for this. This is Admiral Byrd, and I'm just going to point out where some sort of dome and flat earthers go. I know I shouldn't keep on about this, but it just really infuriates me that no one does their own research. So I'm here to help you guys, so you can thank me later. So this is Admiral Byrd. He's the person that they all quote when they say you're not allowed in Antarctica. So have a listen to this.
Is there any unexplored land left on this Earth that might appeal to adventurous young Americans?
Yes, there is. And not up around the North Pole, because it's getting crowded up there now, because they find out it's really usable, not only to live in, but militarily.
Okay, so militarily, that's one reason why there's a treaty, not to mention the alien craft under the ice. But hey, that's one reason. So when you've got a military base there, you don't want anyone flying over. So hopefully that answers that question. It doesn't mean there's extra land or a dome.
But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole, on the other side of the South Pole. Beyond the pole. Now, what he's talking about there is the actual pole itself. From Middle America.
So Middle America's below the Antarctica. So what he's talking about is there's more land. Basically, we know underneath here there was land and there is land. So in other words, when you pass the pole here, you keep going, you'll eventually get to a point where there's no ice, which means that there's land, and that's what he's talking about. It doesn't mean extra land, doesn't mean a dome or anything else. That's what it basically means. So that's what he's talking about. Quickly to the people that say water should drop off a ball. Obviously there's a force because Earth is so big that it's causing its own force to push inwards. Now what people are a bit silly doing, they don't actually think that they need a control. They're doing these experiments where water will drop off of a ball in the place that's already there. So that's a bit stupid. So what you actually need is a control. In order to do the control, you would need to take your football and the water that you're going to put on it and take it outside of the place that you're actually doing the experiment in. Dumpties. So you need to do that outside, which would be in space. Speaking of space, here it says in Hebrew 11:4, it says the stars in heaven. We can see stars, which means we can also see heaven. Of course we can't see heaven. There's a translation. It should have been space. As the stars in heaven. So everybody, we can see heaven. No, we can't. We can see space. So when you start reading the word firmament, you should really be reading it as atmosphere, and it makes a lot more sense. But obviously people don't want to do that. They want to add everything else that I've just said and make an invisible dome that no one's ever seen, and they make it a flat earth that no one's ever seen. Something that no one's thought of, obviously except me, is we're talking about the firmament here, which supposedly is this dome. Now, the dome actually goes back to even the time of Enoch. Now, Enoch lived in the Middle East, middle giving you a clue. So Enoch did not go to the side, he did not go to the other side. All he would have seen, even though we can't see it, is the dome at the top. So how the hell did he see the dome at the top from the Middle East? And everyone else that now has moved around the whole planet cannot see any of the dome whatsoever. And please don't say, oh, I saw a shimmering light and therefore it bounced off of the atmosphere, which is what the actual original word for firmament is. So to answer why Enoch could see a firmament and no one else can. Also, just for the people there that keep talking about NASA lying, they do lie. Let me explain something to you. They do and did do live streams, and they actually used to have to cut the live streams because they actually caught UFOs in the live streams. People would see the UFO flying around, so they ended up having to stop doing that live streams because guess what, because they didn't want to show. Now they did end up doing CGI. Now if they did CGI originally right from the beginning, why add UFOs into their live streams and then cut it when the UFO was flying around? Doesn't make sense, you see the logic there. And I mean, we're talking proper UFOs, we're not talking computer glitches, we're talking UFOs. And just because I did a live chat yesterday and someone questioned my IQ level, and I actually had done a couple of tests. I wanted to make sure they were accurate, so I did a few years apart, but basically I was accepted into Mensa and I refused it, and someone after the live chat sent me a message saying, why the hell did you refuse being part of Mensa? Now if anyone's done a Mensa test, you'll find out it's just a logic test, that's all it is. So are you saying because I accept that someone that knows math or spelling or about football or about any other discipline is lesser than me because my logic worked out some logical questions? So if it was a test about math, I would fail. So does that make me smarter than the person that knows absolutely everything about math? No, it doesn't. It just means I had a bit of logic that I applied to that particular logic test. That's why I refused it, because I don't think I'm smarter than someone else that knows other stuff. So it's just a test on logic. That's all it is, and that's why I don't rate it. But I was curious to see what my IQ was. Sorry.